Okay, we're back and we're talking to Jogging House, and we're going to talk to Boris a little bit about his personal music. Today's Friday, Bandcamp Friday,
Yeah,
and I think and tell us a little bit about your new release today.
yeah. I have a new album out, not on my own label, but on a friend's label, Dauw, Dauw. So it's the Belgium label you probably know from Arbeni's albums or Benoit Piola and the Humblebee and so on. Many great artists are there, and I released an album there yet last year called When, and was a lot of fun. I very much appreciate Peter's work, and we wanted to make kind of a follow up. So today, Companion is out. That is the name of the new album on vinyl. And besides that, there's also of last year's album When, which was a tape release back then. There's also now a vinyl edition there too. So two new LPs from yours truly on Bandcamp today.
And
Yeah.
and and how is this one made? I know you're really great about like showing your process of how you make your music. So how did you approach this
Yeah.
particular album?
I usually try to find setups, like sub setups of the gear that I have, and making albums just with whatever I put together, because I find it easier to focus on not everything at once, but just on a certain amount of instruments. And yeah, technically it's or the gear part, it's made with an analog Electron Analog 4 synthesizer, a Seat Lombardo Deerhorn organ, the theremin thing, and a small in the back here. If you are watching the video, there I have two modular cases, and the smaller one is centered around sampling modules, and it's not the same state as it was when I made the album. And the album was mainly done with a dual morphogene case. So these basically just these three pieces recorded directly on the quarter-inch tape, and auto bim and bam for effects. So yeah, a rather limited setup, but um, I found it inspiring, or inspiring enough to make an album with, I guess. Yeah, and
For the morphogenes, a question on the sampling. Are you sampling? Are you doing these samples, or are you using some other sample reels that are out there?
oh no, no, I always sample myself, and usually I do the sampling while making a track, so it's part of the sound design for me. There's I start with an empty sampler, and like on this album, the samples are made with the instruments that so the Deerhorn and the Analog 4 are the main synths, but also the sample sources. I almost always use samplers kind of to enhance the voice count that I have, and make lo-fi or pitched up, down, whatever versions of like live remixes of what I'm doing and so on. Yeah.
Is it live sampling? And are you recording just a live performance and
Yeah.
then do overdubs
Oh,
or both?
no, I all my tracks since 2000, late 2017, they are just all recorded in one take. I don't
Oh,
do.
okay.
I just, I mean, the samples are there. I can't do everything live because then
Right.
the track would be super long. But when I get to a certain, I basically try to fill my buffers of the samplers, and that means they are full and ready to go. And I program sequences and so on. Then I bring them in live. And in this case, with the Deerhorn, you can't really sequence it or anything. You play it live. So I bring in parts of the samplers that are looping or triggered, or it depends on the track and the sound, of course. And also the same thing on the Analog 4 when I bring in sequences or just drones. And while doing that, I play live with the Deerhorn on top of that. But it's all just going through my mixer and then summed to stereo and recorded, and that's it. That's the album version. So this,
Okay.
if you will, all my tracks are like live sets.
Right.
Nice. How do you bring stuff in? Is it with the mixer or is that in the rack or
No, in the rack usually, because the the mixer is too far away.
Mhm.
So and everything has to go quite fluently, and so sometimes I bring something in with the mixer, but almost never. Usually I have like mixing solutions in the case or next to the case, or in this case, yeah, the Morphogene has volume. The sound and sound knob is like a volume knob, and I also have like a Optomix in there, so just fading in things. And the Analog 4 also has a mixer of its individual tracks. So yeah, I bring it in usually with the instruments and do the mixing. I practice it, and I keep everything running, and then try to set up the main mixer and the sound, like the EQs and so on, in the best way possible. And then, but I don't change these settings during the recording of the actual tracks, mainly because of time and me. I wouldn't need to go away from the deer horn to the mixer and back, even if it's just like 2 steps. But it's in a live recording, it would kind of break the flow a bit. So um, that's also why I focus on smaller setups, because you can do these things way easier with a confined set of tools and not have like a million variables that you need to control and also remember what is doing what. So with these smaller setups, it's easier to remain in control and keep an overview over things.
Yeah, I hear that. I've definitely been going through that journey as well. I remember when I was first recording stuff, everything was already small because that's all I owned, and the workflow was so fast, and I would just record and have a great time. And the more stuff I got, there's more. I needed more hands. I need more hands. You know, I need more inputs. I need more inputs, and
Yeah.
then obviously it just starts my production, or making music just went down because I was just problem solving signal flows for recording.
Absolutely. And you also have the feeling that you should incorporate everything you have all the time,
Right.
which almost never is a good idea. So at some point, I just found it easier to ignore parts of the things that I own for a few weeks and just focus on whatever it is that I find interesting. I made albums with all kinds of setups, and all modular, no modular, just OP1 and Zoya, just Digitakt, just whatever it is. It's just combinations of things that I find interesting, and just try to make the most out of them for a while, and then taking everything apart and finding something new.
But it's mainly hardware focused. Do
It's
you ever
all
use software,
I
DAWs, or?
I mean, I record everything, like after I record to tape, I dub it into Ableton Live and do some edit, like EQing and also fades and cut the track. I mean, make the digital versions. And before I had before I did ambient music, I made more like beat driven stuff, and I made an album just with Ableton, for example. But that was in 2014, and that was also the last time that I was really inspired by software, I guess. I just I don't know, I have nothing against it, but I kind of lost interest in it. I don't want to use the mouse, and I want things to be immediate, and I don't like to there's all these technical details that and like, and my computers aren't super new, and sometimes things stutter, and I try to make things as uncomplicated as possible, and for me personally, with hardware, that is a lot easier. So yeah, everything that probably as Jogging House music is done with hardware. Yes.
Nice.
So, when you're setting up, you're putting together a case, and in this example, a case, and you've got your modules in there. Is there ever like a wild card module that you put in there, and you're like, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that one, but it may or may not happen, or you are more premeditated there?
It's probably more. I mean, in the modular part, it's probably more premeditated, because both of my cases aren't that big. one is 78 HP, 2 rows, and one is 51 HP. So there really isn't the room for any two wildcard. Everything there is like approved and used many times. It's because I had a bigger case or bigger cases and condensed it down to these two, and these are kind of my favorite modules. And some I don't get a lot of new modules, but usually then I just switch the kind, like one VCO for the other or one filter for the other or something like this. But the wildcards are usually more the things outside the modular case, like the Coco Quantos, which is, or everything Seat Lombardo is basically a wildcard.
Right.
It's not, it's not, and same goes with like tape loops, or I mean, it's a simple concept, but still, it's everything is unsynced. And I usually use a lot of loopers, and like basically everything I do is unsynchronized. So for me, the composition is more of a wildcard thing than the sonic space. I like to have control over my sound, but the how everything comes together, this is like I always, if you will, I always try to make some wildcard approach of the whole concept. So when I record a track, I don't know exactly how it will play out. I have some certain parts that I throw in there. I know that the bass should not start at the beginning in this track, but maybe after a minute, and then I bring that in. But there are so many uncertain things that can happen basically at some time in the course of a minute, and sometimes they layer and stack on top of each other. Sometimes they are apart. And with whatever I play, I just try to improvise over that and fill the gaps or mind the gaps, or just react to the things that are happening and that I did like in the minute before, and then it comes back through a long feedback or whatever. Just like I try to create these situations that every take that I record is like different. It's the same track, but it's still a different thing. I don't know how I will break everything down and when the track will end. I just do it intuitively when it feels like, yeah, like the track has come to when the topic has resolved its own momentum. And yeah, that is my wildcard thing, I guess, if you will.
So you're the wild card. um, is this coming from? Is your composition style? Is your approach to music coming from a background in music? Did you used to DJ? Were you in a band? Anything
No,
like that?
I don't know anything. That's the truth. I have zero musical education. I used to be like a hip hop kid. I wanted to make beats, and I got an MPC and try to do samples, like collages of samples from vinyl and cassettes or VHS tape. But I didn't really know what I was doing, and kind of learned through this. And then at some point, like graduated or to synthesizers, and then from more beat driven stuff to ambient or non, I don't even know if it's always ambient, but just non beatless electronic music, if you will. And yeah, it's I just, everything I know I kind of figured out after a while. I guess with some theory it may have gotten a bit faster, but that's just how it happened. And yeah, I just try. Basically, I relearn everything every time I do something. I can't really. It's more like I Google the scales every time
Yeah.
It's kind of embarrassing, really. It's just like I try to find a framework that works for me, and just in that whatever confined space that I build, like scales, instruments, tempo, um, just try to follow my instincts there. But I'm coming to music more from like a listener perspective. I never DJ'd, but I made like many mixtapes. I think I'm kind of good in knowing what fits together, things that fit basically. And this is what I make a sound I find interesting, and then I try to make another sound that fits the first sound. And for me, sound design and composition is the same. It's one process. I don't make sounds and then I make compositions out of these sounds. I start with every time with 0, and then just sometimes I find a melody that I find interesting and I try to adjust the sound to it. Sometimes I find a sound that I think is interesting and find a melody for it, and then I just layer things on top of it and see what works, and at some point also throw out what doesn't work. But it's really not a very conscious process. It's more like a gut feeling, basically.
That's great. You know, I love to hear how organic that is. I'm visualizing it as much as I'm hearing it, so it's great. Um, I'm wondering if that's helping you know when to stop and say it's done,
Most likely.
or do you still have that same struggle a lot of people have of not knowing when to end?
That's actually like I sometimes do like these ask me anything things on Instagram and so on, and that is by far the question that I get the most, is how do I know when a track is done? I before I got those questions, I never even thought about it, to be honest. It's not something that I struggle with at all. I especially with the smaller set, like for example this album Companion. Now the Analog 4 has, depending on how you set it, has 4 voices, as the name implies, 4 monophonic voices. And the Deer horn organ has 6 voices, but they are the same, so it's one voice with 6 like polyphonic voices, so it's 5 elements. And the morphogene has also, I have 2 morphogenes, so there's 2 more elements, and then I used clouds, I think. So that makes 8 things that I can either sequence or play or loop or drone. And once I have something programmed, recorded, whatever it is, dialed in for these 8 things, that is all I have for that track. And then I try to make these 8 things work in a way that is interesting. And basically that is how I know that a track is done, is because my buffers are filled up, my sequences are recorded or programmed, usually recorded, and my oscillators are tuned. That's it. And that is a big plus, at least for me, when using like smaller setups, because if you have 40 oscillators, so 40 voices, and who knows when to bring what in. I mean, probably conductors will find it rather easy to do, but for me, even the thought of it is impossible to handle everything live at once and not lose focus. And I think 8 is kind of a good number for whatever you have. Like I try to have 8 moving parts of various lengths and speeds, and juggle these and bring them together to form a track. If everything works out, it doesn't always, but that's kind of the approach, I guess. And so I know that the track is finished because I don't have anything more to add. It's impossible, kind of.
Nice.
Nice. What do you use to sequence? Modules or?
On the modular, no, I don't have any sequencing modules. I think I never did. I don't like, because I don't program things. Usually I record MIDI or audio. I just play it in. And at least the modules that when I started with modular, they didn't have that many like loose record. I'm not interested in sequencing things on the grid, so it's on every step something happens. So I just always stuck to things outside the modular. And for the modular, my favorite sequencer still is actually the Digitone, Electron Digitone, the MIDI part of it. I run that through an Expert Sleeper's FH2 MIDI to CV module, and with the Digitone, I just play in the sequences and yeah, mute them or start them, stop them, whatever. This is my main sequencer, but often I record, if almost always have some sort of looper, audio looper, or not looper always in the sense that like a solo guitarist would on stage loop and play on top of each other and layer sounds inside that looper. But for me, like various moving loops, streams of audio, but like with one sound each. And so these are just audio. It's just a chunk of audio that keeps repeating and that I try to bring in at exactly the right time, or not.
Which so that's sometimes where the magic is, right? When it's the wrong time. Yeah.
It surprises me. I have an idea of what will happen, but it's not when everything is unsynced and you have loops. Like if you have 3 loops of one is 55 seconds, the other 1 minute, and the other is 45 seconds. It's, at least for me, impossible to know what will happen exactly when, especially if you leave a bit of space in your loops. And then this is where the magic or the disaster happens. It's like trying to just react to whatever the machines throw at you. And for me, MIDI or CV sequences, if you will, I treat it the same as an audio loop. It's just a chunk of information. I'm not really interested in having everything synced or at the same speed, or it's just I record it as I feel it works, as I think represents my emotions at that time of recording, basically. Yeah. So that's why my cases also are not too big, and I don't worry much about super scientific. How can this one sequencer sequence the other sequencer, and then there's the clock divided, and it's. I don't think that complicated. I think in sounds and frequencies and when.
Very nice. Cool. Did you have anything else, David?
Yeah, just a few things before we wrap up, because I know we're getting close to our time. Thank you so much for doing this, by the way. I really appreciate it. We both really appreciate it. You're it's evening for you, it's morning for us. So I appreciate you staying up.
It's not that late. It's I have a few hours.
There you go. So looking forward to this next year. How are you feeling about your approach to music? Do you think is there going to be anything that's changed, or I know it's kind of hard to look into a crystal ball, but is there something out there you kind of want to try? Process wise.
Technically, you mean technical processes? I don't know. Most likely, I will stumble over new things, gear in the course of the next year, and then I will try to incorporate it in some way. I usually find it more interesting to work with what I have, but I'm not free of gas at all. That's the human factor, I guess. But I don't have like any super drastic change in mind or something that I want to try out that is radically different from what I did. I feel that it's already. I don't know how big my setup is compared to others. And someone would say it's huge, someone would say it's rather small. It depends on the perspective, I guess. But I think I already own too much, and there's like a myriad of albums in there depending on how I use things, and you can use everything in so many different ways. So I don't think that I'm done with exploring anything that I have, really. And I just want to try to express myself through whatever combination of things that I have. I hope the next year won't be as devastating as this. So the music can more often come from like a more relaxed or happy place, if you will. That would be my goal actually, to not have worries dictating my composition so much. But that is not a gear the gear answer. So but I don't know. I'm pretty sure companies will keep putting out very interesting things, and I try to stay away from them as good as possible, but I won't succeed. So
Yeah.
I can tell you in 12 months what changed and not, but I have no plans in that regard.
So one thing that did you ever play live
Yeah, sure.
before the pandemic?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So one thing that changed for for all of us was we have a local Denver monthly open mic for modular. So we meet
Yeah.
at a bar, and it's called Freak Boutique. It's put on by WMD, the Eurorack
Ah, cool.
manufacturer in Denver. So you sign up and you get picked, and then you get to play. And that was a big part of our community. In March, you know, all of that went away, right? But amazingly, the community is so much stronger now because of things like this, because of streaming, because of we have had so many opportunities open up due to the pandemic. So it's not all doom and gloom, but it's like it's obviously impactful. But how has that affected you? Have you had the chance to do streams and play live just from your studio the way it is? And how do you see that moving forward into the next year, where perhaps hopefully everything will open back up, where we can actually go out and play in
Yeah.
person with people?
Yeah. I hope shows will be back, definitely. I never played a real live set, mainly because my internet connection used to be pretty bad, and only since October they finally put down a better cable in the street, and yeah, I theoretically I think I could stream now, but I just haven't tried it. I have I made two longer or three, no, two longer pieces that are basically live sets, but pre-recorded. Um, so this is yeah what I did in that regard, because my music or how I record it is basically like a live version all the time. For me it's rather normal to work that way. I just didn't feel confident in the connection being stable enough to what I really don't want is to have like a stuttery stream, and like then I prefer to have something pre-recorded, and I know people will be able, if they like my music, will be able to enjoy it and not have these technical shortcomings. So that is that part. But I want to try out the live streaming thing. I don't know if I haven't checked out if my camera works as a webcam and so on. And like these are the things that basically kept me from it, not the performance part itself. So I sure, but I record music all the time anyways in live fashion. So if the camera is running or not is not the main part. Would be then being able to stay awake if it's for in a US stream, for example. Yeah.
Or get up early enough. So
Yeah, but no.
The Freak Boutique usually goes until like 11, so that would be 7 o'clock in Germany. So
Yeah, I could do it, but I would be super grumpy.
yeah. Well, that might get some interesting dark ambient.
We'll invite you onto an earlier show for CMSS at some point for sure.
Sure.
Yeah, we do.
We do more European friendly time slots.
Sunday afternoon is sometimes the meetup time or show time, so that usually works fairly well.
Yeah. We'll knock on your door for that for sure. It's been really awesome talking to you. It's been great.
Thank you.
It's great to see the face behind the hands You know, everybody's probably watched a lot of your videos and has your tapes. So I can't wait to check out this new album today.
Yeah, I hope everyone likes it. It's a very personal album, and I hope that comes through in the sounds. And of course, I hope you find it like inspiring or calming or whatever it is your your body and mind needs at the moment.
Very nice.
Okay.
Cool. Well, I think that's it, right, David?
I think that's it. I think
Boris,
we
thank
got
you very much. This was awesome.
My pleasure.
so great. Yeah.